Hey traders, welcome to another week in review for my Emini S&P 500 ES trading. And overall, quite a good one. It was a shortened week. We had the long weekend, Labor Day, and I don't normally trade on the Mondays anyways, but obviously, yeah, not trading on the holiday there. And it was overall pretty good, though. Things picked up pretty fast. A lot of times after the holidays and long weekends, it can take a day or two for the market to kind of get itself going again. Wasn't really the case on this particular week. And overall, pulled out a result that I'm definitely very happy with. And there's some other factors in there too, with the non-farm employment report later in the week and stuff. We'll talk about that a little bit further along here. First thing, I just thought I'd touch on the Monday because I've gotten a couple of emails about it recently. Just people asking me why I don't trade on the Mondays, for these weeks in review and stuff. And it's just a long-running thing for me. I tend to, like to have that long weekend every weekend, so I take those off. There's a few exceptions. If the market maybe is exceptionally good after a slower period, well then I might want to take advantage of the Monday. Or if perhaps I haven't been trading quite as well as I want, or markets have just been kind of slow and I'm trying to take advantage and just have a good week overall, then I might trade one of those Mondays. But most of the time I do take them off. In fact, the vast majority of the time. And it doesn't really matter if it's Monday or Friday or what have you. I don't select the Monday just because it's a day that has less potential or anything like that. But generally speaking, Monday and Friday do have a little bit less potential than Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday do. So yeah, good results in here. One of the first things I wanted to go through as far as sort of lessons from the week was just in terms of basically having a small number of trades that led to a pretty big percentage of the profits. And I think that's pretty typical of most experienced traders. They'll have that being the case. There are some scalpers that that's probably not the case. They obviously take very small wins and they just kind of add them all up. But for most people who are kind of trading swings as day traders on the intraday, or obviously longer term traders, it's usually a small selection of trades that lead to a big percentage of their profits. So that is something I do try to take advantage of. There's a lot of times you will hear people talk about trying to ride your winners, right? Keep the losses small, ride the winners. And that's, if you're like a trend follower, you're a longer term position trader, that can definitely make sense. But when you're an intraday trader, a day trader, you're not always going to get these sort of trending markets, these things that you can just hang on. If you want to be consistent day to day, it's going to be tough to do that, right? To take trades and to hold on for long periods of time. So you have to adapt and kind of pick your spots and be able to find those opportunities where you can take a little bit more. And so I try to do that. There's basically by default I'm pretty happy with 2 points. I risk on an average loss around 1 point. Full loss 1.25 points. So I'm pretty happy with anything around 2 points or so. But if I could take a little bit more, if the opportunity is there to aim for a little bit more, I'm happy to go for it. But it's important to remain adaptable. And if that's not really developing that way, there's nothing wrong with taking the 2 points off the table. But when I go through the week's results and take a look at the numbers, if I just kept things very mechanical and just took out a couple points each time, would still have a pretty good result, still in that 10 to 15 point per week range. But the profits I've taken, like in this case here, there's one that I took down for a few points because there was some room for things to kind of move down. I actually could have had obviously a lot more, so maybe not the best example here because I really kind of left a ton on the table. But if I look at cases like this, or if I look at there's, well, even here, taking a little bit more than 2 points, I brought this down into a level, an area that could bring in some buyers, or going into this day here where, this is the one where I really took advantage with some big swings, some pretty obvious swings. So, when I look at those in those cases where it took more than 2 points, it adds up at the end of the week to 10.75 points. And, that's the numbers in addition to just the 2 points on those particular trades. So it doesn't always work out in my favor. There are going to be times where I'm aiming for 3 or 4 points and price gets to 2.5 and then comes back and it might take me out. I might take a loss. So there is something that you have to kind of risk to do that. You might have to give something back, but most of the time, as long as I'm picking my spots where I'm going to open up those targets, and as long as the market's moving in a way that allows me to do that, it's going to work out in my favor. And that's really kind of one of the major keys if you want to get from being, just a moderately profitable trader to being quite exceptionally profitable, right? Because that's kind of that point that can kind of break you away from just struggling for consistency and getting into that sort of next level, because you are being adaptable, you are picking your spots and letting the market run a little bit when you have the opportunity. And when you can get those trades that are 3 or 4 times your average risk, and you're taking those as your average win, well, not average win, but you're taking those as your occasional wins and multiplying that risk, it just makes a huge big difference on the bottom line results, and takes a lot of the pressure off as well, right? Because it means that it's quite easy to often recover from. If you take a couple losses, you go into a little bit of drawdown, that just 1 or 2 trades can often bring you back. Now, it's important to mention that not every market is going to offer these sort of opportunities. I mean, look at these moves here, right? These are big vertical high momentum pushes that are breaking away from areas that can bring sellers into the market, that can bring supply into the market, right? So you don't always have these opportunities to trade off the areas of supply and demand. You don't always have the opportunity to trade with this kind of momentum, but when you do, if you can take advantage, the opportunity is there often for quite a bit more. People sometimes run into trouble when they look for these home run trades all the time when the markets aren't moving well. But that's where obviously you probably do want to keep things simple. Probably do want to take a couple points or potentially even a little bit less if the markets aren't moving particularly well. But we are seeing volatility right now, right? That's one of the things that with the U.S. leadership and everything and trade war stuff and all of that, definitely bringing some volatility to the market. So it doesn't mean every day has these sort of opportunities, but there's enough of them that you can definitely take advantage and make some pretty outsized profits because of them. So as the week went on here, this is just going into a little bit later on the with these big breakdowns and then things moving back up. But as the week went on here, this one getting into the day before the non-farm employment report, the non-farm payroll. Now, the thing with that, I often find it a very difficult day to trade the day before, sometimes the day of as well. And the same thing can apply to like the FOMC major releases and things when there's a lot of stuff going on, press conferences with that, and interest rate decisions and stuff. A lot of times the day before, the market kind of tightens up, doesn't move all that well. Now, clearly wasn't the case here. It was moving very well, but kind of erratically. I couldn't really find some good trades that I could take with low risk. There were some good swings, but there wasn't really cases where I wasn't trading into difficult areas. So even though there's some situations, if I'd been more aggressive, I could have made some points. It wasn't really worth the risk, especially the day before the non-farm. So I often will be pretty conservative, pretty careful that day before. So I only had the one trade in here. The non-farm itself, as we get into that here, you can see a much different day, pretty choppy, deeper pullbacks happening in here as well, and things jumping around a little bit. And same sort of thing. I mean, it tends to move more than the day before does. Obviously, the last day was a little bit of an exception, but tends to move more. But the non-farm employment day can be a difficult one to trade. They seem to be days that either offer very little potential at all or a lot of potential, and it doesn't really seem to be something in between most of the time. I'll either have a day where I basically break even or a day where I make 6 or 8 points, right? It's that middle ground tends to be hard to find there. But if you're a newer trader, probably best just observe those non-farm days, even the day before, just being really careful, really cautious. But things are moving and you've got some good direction. Non-farm doesn't always give that. Sometimes it does do some whipsawing back and forth, but if you've got some good direction, sort of thing you can take advantage of. This is not the cleanest trend by any means. Had some losses along the way, but just kept going after it, kept attacking it all the way until we got up pretty near to where I was kind of targeting for the market to eventually get to, into an area where I was expecting to probably see some supply into the market. Came in a little bit early, but still, essentially reached that area. So not the most straightforward of days, but if you just kept going after it, definitely some points to be made in there. But again, it's some of those opportunities where, because things are moving fairly well, we're breaking away from areas opportunities to take a bit more than a couple points, opportunities in here with a more advanced play, being able to, again, take a bit more than a couple points if it made its break. I tried to do that earlier, took a loss, same thing, was aiming for this next area in here if possible because of the accumulation going on at this area, because of the volume being traded this area, looking for something more distant. So those were definitely the, kind of the big takeaway lessons as far as the week went. Just being kind of careful with the non-farm stuff and really trying to, when the market is, pretty volatile, when the market's covering some ground, take advantage where you can. And again, the warning comes in on that, don't try to make every trade a home run trade. If you pick your spots, if you look for those areas that, the structure is working in your favor, the momentum is working in your favor, and if you are a little patient, it's usually going to pay off. Those are the ones you should target, and keep the rest of your trading pretty simple, but open up, expand those targets when available if the market conditions are right, and that really can be the key element to opening up a lot of profitability for people. But it's not easy, right? Because there are going to be those times where it might not work in your favor. It's also difficult sometimes to sit through a trade when you have a few points already, and it comes back to 1.5, and it goes back to a few points, and it comes back to 2 points, and kind of waiting it out to try and get it to your target. So that patience, that sort of discipline there does become a little bit easier over time, but you definitely can learn to sort of read the warning signs in the market, and when it's not following through, there's nothing wrong with taking the profit that's available as long as you're doing it for clear, objective reasons rather than emotional reasons, right? So hopefully you guys had a solid week, and thanks for watching this week in review. Hopefully you guys found it useful. And if you are more interested in some in-depth trading journal stuff on individual days, feel free to check out the website, or you want some more details, you can email me, comment on this. I'll be happy to provide those for you. So have a good one, guys. Talk to you soon.